This is part 2 of Lesson 11 corresponding to Chapter 11, VPN Management. VPN hosts and trust. Trust should vary depending upon who is allowed in by way of the VPN. From least risk at the top of the slide to most risk at the bottom, we have employees on corporate laptops, for example, on a managed network, employees on a home computer, employees on airport internet, wireless or kiosk, authorized partners. The most risks are authorized customers. With each level, there is less control that IT has. The first level might be an employee on a hotel network, assuming a decent hotel. At home, the employee should be following IT policy, but also has potentially a family or roommate and friends and neighbors who might have access. Also, there is the risk of physical breach. Policy may be sufficient in mitigating these risks if the employee is trustworthy. Airport networks are improving every day, and many are at the level of the managed network. The disadvantage is that the employee is out in the open and subject to surveillance. Authorized partners and customers are more of a risk because there is no expectation of corporate policy controls. One has to assume they will act autonomously and may represent an increased risk. The nature of VPN threats and attacks. Home computers are often less secure than IT-maintained machines. If a home computer is compromised, that attack can follow the VPN to the internal network. A constant live connection, such as always-on DSL, gives hackers more opportunities to penetrate the corporate network by way of a VPN. A personal firewall on the home computer should be mandatory and will mitigate a lot of risk. A machine with a VPN on it needs security passwords, firewalls, and physical security. Don't let others use your VPN-enabled computer. Treat the machine the same way you would a dangerous weapon. You wouldn't leave it out of your sight or laying around carelessly. You want to control who has access to it. Corporate espionage can start with the home being burglarized, so consider physical security recommendations. All home users should have intrusion detection. When possible, the IT team should set up the home system and not trust the user to get it right. Make sure you train the installer before installing the VPN. Inexperienced installers can set up a VPN with incorrect settings. Make sure home users are all aware of the latest patches and make sure they get applied. Traveling workers should be reminded not to leave computers in hotel rooms or cars. Don't let a system with a VPN into the company network out of your sight. Some VPN vulnerabilities. Denial of service attacks, although DOS attacks are not very common against VPNs. Missing patches. Backdoor attacks, like the one in the movie War Games. This is where the system developer or someone else leaves a user account and password on a secure system in case he needs to get back in. The best way to mitigate this is through scheduled auditing of all accounts on your VPN, as well as strong documented procedures for how and when accounts are created and deleted. Unpublished vulnerability in code. This is the most difficult threat you will face because there isn't a lot you can do beyond following the security best practices. Weak client security. Weak authentication. To mitigate this, rely on either token-based or biometric authentication methods instead of, or in addition to, a user ID and password. Ensure users employ strong passwords. Hairpinning, which we discussed in the previous part, and credential sharing. Balancing anonymity and privacy. Anonymity is the ability of a network or system user to remain unknown. Problem with anonymity solutions is that they don't always protect your privacy. In many cases, traffic carried anonymously by these applications is unencrypted. Privacy, keeping information about a network or system user from being disclosed to unauthorized people. Sorry for the typo there. If you want to protect your information, a VPN connection does an excellent job of this by encrypting the data it carries. VPN troubleshooting. Before you start troubleshooting your VPN issue, you must have access to the following information. You must have a network diagram showing the placement of the VPN and other key network components, a copy of the current VPN configuration, any error system or alert logs, an operations guide, maintenance logs and change management records. You need to identify the systems. identify the symptoms. With the symptoms, you need to make sure that they are specific. Users tend to generalize with statements like, no one can get on the VPN, or the intranet is down from the VPN. Determine the scope of the problem. Is just one user down, 100 users, or the entire company? Is it limited to just one department or many? Look for changes. Before you assume something is broken, see if anything has changed. If with a single user, did he or she install a new application like Skype or Tor that could be interfering with the VPN? And if they installed Tor, you really need to be looking to that very carefully, since email placed in a Tor environment is basically not accessible to you. Try the most likely solution. Test it. Check to see if you broke anything else. And then, of course, document, document, document. In summary, we talked about the VPN best practices in this chapter, common network locations where VPNs are deployed, VPN deployment planning for the enterprise, the general nature and source of threats against VPNs, and VPN policy creation.